On the beautiful day of April 28, 1758, James Monroe was born. Young James went on to become a strong political leader. His strong Republican beliefs led him to become one of the 5 founding fathers of our nation. The political parties of America were downplayed by Monroe because he wanted to eliminate the differences in political thoughts. By doing this, he hoped to bring a sense of unity to the government.
What was the purpose of the Florida Purchase Treaty?
Reclaiming the Florida Territory for the United States not only expands the country by a significant amount, but also weakens the Spanish power on the continent. We also settled the dispute regarding the Sabine River in Texas, which firmly establishes the U.S. boundaries.
Spain wants Florida.
No, America wants Florida.
No, Spain wants Florida.
No, we get Florida.
No, we do.
No, we do.
Definitely ours.
No, how about I'll pay you for it and we'll split the difference?
How about we'll call it the Transcontinental Treaty of 1818?
Or how about
The Adams Treaty?
Yeah.
Alright.
Or how about the Florida Purchase Treaty?
Even better.
Bubbles, we're going back to the White House for a second term.
Now that you're back for your second term, what are your goals?
I hope to continue to steer away from partisanship and continue to build our nation into a larger authority among European powers.
Mr. President, what is your position on the National Bank?
I've refused to fund improvements on the Second Bank of the USA because I believe that it is unconstitutional. We mustn't interpret the Constitution freely. A national bank? That's going to ruin our economy. Bubbles, I choose you.
Any words on the Monroe Doctrine?
We can't let foreign nations continue to harass the Western Hemisphere with their selfish plans for expansion. There, Bubbles. There. I hope this doctrine will strongly dissuade them from any future attempts.
In 1823, Monroe formally announced to Congress the Monroe Doctrine.
Monroe's presidency was preceded by Madison and followed by the Era of Good Feelings. This was one of the greatest moments of pride for America after they won the War of 1812. Nationalism was spread throughout the nation, creating a better economy. The citizens soon realized that they could not let their worries be wasted in European affairs. The people were now called Americans because they were a unified country.
How would you describe the atmosphere in the nation now that the War of 1812 has ended in an American victory?
I feel like there's been an increase in pride in being an American. I'm seeing fewer conflicts between political parties. In fact, I think there's a possibility that, at this point, there are none. President Monroe has been assigning positions regardless of political parties, and I think that's really supporting nonpartisanship.
I'm proud to be an American.
Hi, I'm a Federalist.
I'm a Democrat Republican.
I like your shirt.
I like yours too.
Can you explain your reasoning behind the tariffs that have angered so many Americans?
With the European countries producing such inexpensive products, our own economy is suffering. In order to strengthen our industries and produce profits, we must put tariffs on imported goods.
What are some other plans for improving the country?
Using the funds from the newly raised tariffs, I plan to make improvements on roads and canals throughout the country for easier and faster trading, therefore further improving the economy.
We need these taxes to pay for the roads that we're going to build and the canals to help improve our economy. Thank you, good citizens.
How has the Panic of 1819 affected you and your family?
It made me really sad. We couldn't do a lot of stuff we used to do. It's not fun anymore, and we have to give my pet puppy away.
Many people think that the Panic of 1819 was a time where all of America was freaking out, but actually, it was just an economic depression.
Why don't you just go buy a jacket? It's freezing.
I have money!
Why don't you have money?
Four.
I have no money on me. I'm sorry. Have fun.
In 1818, the state of Maryland issued a tax on all banks within the state that were not chartered by them. To be a bank chartered by the state means to be directed by them and to be given rules. The tax stated that these banks could not issue banknotes unless they had a special stamped paper given by the state. The paper needed for this also cost money. The problem was that Mr. McCulloch, who was a cashier at the Baltimore Branch Bank of the United States, refused to follow this law. He continued to issue banknotes without the stamped papers. McCulloch refused to pay the taxes and was then sued by the state of Maryland. The case was reversed in McCulloch's favor because Maryland does not have the power to tax a bank created by Congress according to the Constitution. On February 13, 1819, James Talmadge Jr., a congressman from the House of Representatives, proposed the idea to prohibit slavery from Missouri entirely within a generation. He said that children with slave parents are free until they reach the age of 25. During the debate whether or not to pass the amendment, the discussion of admitting Missouri as a state was brought up. The amendment passed in the House, but the Senate had a serious controversy over the amendment. The Senate said that there are 11 free states and 11 slave states, and Missouri would throw off the balance. The amendment was later turned into a bill. The Talmadge Agreement was incorporated into the Missouri Compromise of 1820.
As a Southerner, what are your opinions of the Missouri Compromise?
I think it's outrageous that they don't want to let Missouri become a state with slavery. This is the South. Our economy is dependent on these slaves. What's next? Slavery is abolished entirely?
Work harder.
What are you doing?
He's my slave. It's our only way to earn money.
No, you can't do that. The state hasn't acclaimed slavery yet.
What are your opinions of the Missouri Compromise living in the North?
Slavery should be abolished entirely instead of a compromise. It's wrong and unnecessary. New states shouldn't be allowed in if they tolerate slavery.
The Rush-Bagot Agreement was between the United States and Britain. The agreement provided a large demilitarization of the Great Lakes and Lake Champlain. Since there was many British naval arrangements and forts still remaining, the treaty enforced that the United States and British North America could maintain only one military vessel and one cannon on Lake Ontario and Lake Champlain. On the other Great Lakes, the U.S. and BNA were permitted to keep 2 military vessels on the waters. How did the treaty all start? Well, it started with a series of letters written back and forth across the seas between Richard Rush and British Prime Minister to Washington, Sir Charles Bagot. The agreement was ratified by the Senate on April 16, 1818, and led to the Treaty of Washington of 1871. The Treaty of 1818 was a treaty between the two major world powers, the United States and the United Kingdom, regarding fisheries, boundary, and the restoration of slaves. The treaty has many other names, including the London Convention and the Anglo-American Convention of 1818. The treaty, containing 6 articles, set limits and boundaries pertaining to the borders of the United States and British North America, as well as fishing rights in Newfoundland and Labrador for the U.S. The treaty also confirmed the Anglo-American Convention of 1815, another treaty which regulated trade between these two powers, and allowed it to continue for another 10 years. The Treaty of 1818 firmly established the borders and limits that both the U.S. and U.K. had in their respective North American lands.
And the tariffs that have angered so many Americans?
With the European country... I just looked at it. Not gonna lie.
22.
Hi, I'm a...
95.
No, 95. You can't do that. Something hasn't declared you for...
15.
No, who is this?
Yana.
That's so...
Beginning? Yo, are we doing the beginning of it?
President, why are you filming me? It was a vice president and a...
36.
As a Southerner, what are your opinions of the Missouri Compromise?
Alright.
Supreme Court Judge.
Stop walking up.
Griffin, move.
Those are both going in.
No, he can be in it.
Yo, why are you editing? There it is.
Adams posted McCulloch on the...
What other thing do you have to do?